Everyone in the cafeteria turned their heads when the sound of laughter echoed across the linoleum floors. It started at the table where the varsity football players sat, loud and rowdy as ever, and quickly spread to the nearby tables. It wasn't the kind of laughter that came from a shared joke or a funny story, it was the cruel, mocking kind that made your stomach twist even if you weren't the target. At the center of their amusement stood Miss Loretta. Dressed in her usual pastel uniform and hairnet, she moved with the quiet grace of someone who had been doing this job for a long time. With each scoop of mashed potatoes and careful placement of fruit cups, she tried her best to pretend she didn't hear them. But everyone could tell she did. "Hey Miss Loretta, what's the special today?" "Genius stew." One of the players snickered. Another chimed in, "Careful, she might invent something with that spoon of hers." The taunts weren't clever, but they were loud. And they hurt. You could see it in the way her shoulders stiffened for just a second before she smiled that patient, practiced smile and continued her work. Miss Loretta was used to being underestimated. She'd worked in the school cafeteria for over 15 years and had heard every kind of insult you could think of, about her weight, her age, her skin, her job. Some kids whispered behind her back. Others weren't even subtle. They assumed because she served them food, she must not have much going on upstairs. That she was just the lunch lady, and nothing more. But what they didn't know, what they never stopped to consider, was that Loretta Washington had once been a different woman in a different world. Years ago, Loretta had been a student at Howard University. She'd studied mathematics and computer science with dreams of working in aerospace. She had a brilliant mind, a gift for patterns and problem solving, and professors who urged her to continue toward a PhD. But life, as it often does, had other plans. A family tragedy forced her to drop out during her final semester. Her mother had passed unexpectedly, and with no siblings and a father long gone, Loretta had to return home to take care of her younger cousins. Jobs were scarce, and the cafeteria was hiring. So she shelved her dreams and picked up a ladle. But she never stopped learning. At night, when the house was quiet and her cousins were asleep, she'd pull out old textbooks, print out online articles, and solve logic puzzles just to keep her mind sharp. Her life had changed, but her brilliance hadn't gone anywhere, it had just gone quiet. And now, sitting in the back of that cafeteria with her lunch tray, she listened as the school's IT specialist tried and failed, again, to get the new grading system online. The system had gone down 3 days ago, and no one could figure out how to fix it. Grades were inaccessible. Teacher rosters were scrambled. The district was breathing down the principal's neck. Loretta had overheard the problem during one of her morning prep shifts. The teachers were frustrated, the students were gleeful, and Mr. Haynes, the IT guy, looked more stressed with each passing hour. Some kind of server issue, he'd muttered that morning as he paced through the kitchen, tapping furiously at a tablet. Could be a corrupted DNS, or the APIs hung up on a bad patch. I don't know. Loretta had blinked. Corrupted DNS. Bad patch. She hadn't used those terms in years, but they were as familiar to her as flour and sugar. She made a mental note of what he said, and after her shift ended, she went home and started digging. She stayed up late that night reading about the system the district used. A proprietary grading platform, known to have issues with database integrity after certain updates. She cross-referenced documentation, checked public forums, and even simulated a few scenarios on her ancient laptop. When she came to school the next day, she carried a flash drive with a single script she thought might work. She didn't offer it right away. She wasn't sure how it would be received, or if anyone would take her seriously. But when she saw Mr. Haynes slumped over his computer at lunch, surrounded by teachers asking when things would be fixed, she felt something stir in her. A flicker of that old confidence. "Mr. Haynes," she said quietly, stepping into the teacher's lounge where he sat, "I don't mean to interrupt, but I might have a solution." He looked up, blinking. "Miss Loretta." She gave a small nod. "I used to study computer science. I looked into the issue you were talking about. I think the API is looping because it's looking for a deprecated function call after the last patch." If you run a temporary bypass script, just a soft reroute until the devs issue a fix, you might restore limited access. There was a long pause. Some of the teachers looked at her like she'd started speaking another language. Mr. Haynes stared. Wait. What? She held out the flash drive. It's just a script. Safe. It doesn't rewrite anything. Just points the call somewhere stable until the patch can be fixed manually. He hesitated, then took it from her slowly. You wrote this. She smiled faintly. Last night. Just a guess. But it should work. He plugged it in, skeptically at first. But within minutes, the loading screen that had been frozen for days began to shift. Numbers appeared. Classes reloaded. Teacher dashboards slowly blinked to life. Wait. No way, he whispered. The room fell silent. Then someone gasped. It's working. Mr. Haynes looked at Loretta like he'd just seen a ghost. How did you? Loretta just shrugged. I used to do this kind of thing. Word spread through the school like wildfire. The woman they all ignored, underestimated, or mocked had done what no one else could. The laughter that had once filled the cafeteria was gone, replaced by something else entirely, awe and shame. Miss Loretta went back to work the next day like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The next morning at Jefferson High felt different. The halls, usually buzzing with idle chatter and noisy footsteps, were filled with an odd kind of silence. Students gave each other sideways glances, whispering behind lockers. The events of the previous afternoon still lingered. Miss Loretta, the black lunch lady with the ever-present hairnet and quiet smile, had done what the police, faculty, and even the IT department couldn't. She solved the mystery of the missing scholarship funds. What many didn't realize was that Miss Loretta had once been a systems analyst. Before budget cuts and a family emergency brought her back to her hometown, she had worked in cybersecurity for a mid-sized tech firm. But people only saw the apron. They saw the trays of tater tots and the way she wiped down tables with quiet efficiency. No one ever stopped to ask what she'd done before the kitchen. No one imagined the depth behind her calm eyes. It all started when the school's senior scholarship fund, money meant for kids who needed help getting to college, suddenly vanished. The records were wiped. The financial officer, Mr. Peterson, swore the files had been encrypted. The police had been called. The school board panicked. Weeks passed. No one could figure out what had happened. Whispers of internal fraud spread. Students were heartbroken, especially the seniors who had worked tirelessly with the hope of earning a chance. But Miss Loretta noticed something no one else did. A student had left a laptop in the cafeteria weeks ago. She turned it into Lost and Found, but she remembered the way it hummed strangely when she touched the keyboard. She wasn't trying to pry. But something didn't sit right with her. And when she overheard Peterson mumbling to the principal about remote access points and server pings, well, old instincts stirred. So she asked for a favor. I know this sounds crazy, she said to Principal Ramsey after hours, still wearing her apron, but I think I can help. Ramsey, skeptical but desperate, allowed her 10 minutes alone in the library's computer lab. 2 hours later, Loretta emerged with a flash drive in hand and a look on her face that made the assistant principal sit up straight. She had found the breach, traced it through a network of temporary IP addresses, and, miraculously, uncovered a hidden backdoor access code. It wasn't a student. It wasn't even someone in the building. A former contractor had created a ghost account months ago during a system update. He'd siphoned off the scholarship funds, rerouting them through dummy organizations. The next morning, Loretta handed the information over to the authorities. The funds were recovered, the account deactivated, and the contractor was arrested. The school board was stunned. Parents were shocked. The seniors, they celebrated like someone had just handed them their future back. And yet, it was only now that the dust had settled, that people really began to look at her differently. That morning, as she moved through the kitchen, stirring oatmeal and laying out breakfast trays, students trickled in more slowly than usual. A few girls from the basketball team lingered near the serving line. One of them, Aisha, smiled timidly. Miss Loretta, she asked. Yes, baby, is it true? That you used to work in tech. That you, hacked something. Loretta laughed softly. I didn't hack anything, sweet pea. I just paid attention. The girl's eyes widened. You're like a real life detective. Another student, Marcus, stepped up behind her. My brother said you caught a white collar criminal. Said you traced his code like a boss. Loretta looked up from the tray of bananas. I just followed the patterns. He left digital fingerprints everywhere. From the back of the line, someone clapped. A slow, deliberate clap. The room turned. It was Mr. Anderson, the physics teacher known for quoting Stephen Hawking and correcting people's grammar mid-conversation. Well, I'll be damned, he said, smiling. We all thought the system had us beat. But the cafeteria staff cracked it. Loretta gave a small, amused shrug. Sometimes the people closest to the mess are the ones who can see what's wrong. She didn't say it to shame anyone. She said it because it was true. Too often, people overlook those who kept the school running, the janitors, the lunch workers, the aides. They moved around the school like ghosts, seen but not acknowledged. But Loretta had been watching all along. Listening. Noticing. She'd seen how Mr. Peterson flinched whenever someone mentioned the audit. She noticed how the Wi-Fi slowed dramatically only during certain hours when the lost laptop had been connected. By lunchtime, students who normally ignored her began offering quiet thank yous. A few even asked questions about her past. What's cybersecurity like? Did you go to college? Can you teach us how to trace IP addresses? For the first time in years, Miss Loretta talked about her old life. She mentioned how she'd loved problem solving, how patterns fascinated her, how code was like a language you had to feel as much as read. She didn't boast. She never raised her voice. But the cafeteria became something else that day. Not just a place for chicken sandwiches and milk cartons, but a classroom. By the end of the week, a group of students had started a coding club. Loretta wasn't listed as the faculty sponsor, she wasn't officially on staff, but the students asked her to sit in during meetings. She did. Quietly. Watching, guiding, smiling when someone got something right. As for Mr. Peterson, he resigned quietly after it was revealed he'd ignored the security flaws Loretta later found. And when a local news station came to cover the story, Loretta declined an interview. I'm not the story, she said. Those kids are. Still, her story traveled. And while she went back to the kitchen each morning, tying on her apron like always, people saw her differently. Not just as the lunch lady, but as a protector, a guide, a reminder that intelligence doesn't always wear a suit, or carry a title. Sometimes, it wears a name tag that says, Loretta, and serves mashed potatoes with a knowing smile. And somewhere in the back of the school, a few more kids started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could do something extraordinary too.